The secrets of the small shafts of the Great Pyramid. 1. Underbar the discovery of new shafts in the Pyramid of Cheops in 1872. Part 1. Professor Charles Piazzi Smith was a Scottish astronomer and esoteric who was considered brilliant but eccentric. From 1846 to 1888 he was director of the Royal Observatory in Edinburgh. He was also enthusiastic about the Egyptian pyramids and wanted to take precise measurements there himself. In 1865 he began his first exploration of the pyramids. In 1872 he wanted to take additional measurements on the Pyramid of Cheops, but was prevented by illness. So he asked a friend W. Dixon if he could make the measurements he wanted. At that time he was there with his brother John, building a bridge over the river near Cairo. The Scot Wayneman Dixon was a railway engineer by profession, and a good friend of Flinders Petrie's father, whom he met in 1873. Wayneman became famous for his discoveries in the Pyramid of Cheops in 1872 and for transporting an obelisk called Cleopatra's Needle from Alexandria to London in 1877 directed by his brother John, and for finding an original cladding stone for the Pyramid of Cheops. Wayneman, who was in Egypt from 1871 to 1877, was at the time with another, Scot from Methlick in Aberdeenshire, Dr. James Andrew Sandilands Grant, friend. Grant was the son of a banker and studied medicine at the University of Aberdeen. He came to Alexandria in April 1866, where he worked as a doctor to combat the cholera epidemic that had broken out there. In recognition of his services, he received the title of Knight of the Imperial Order of Mejidi from the Turkish Sultan. In 1867 he returned to England and moved permanently to Cairo in 1868. The Egyptian administration awarded him the title of Bey IV in 1880, because of his merits. In 1882 he received the title of LL from the University of Aberdeen. D. Legum Doctor = Doctor of Law. In P. Smith, W. Dixon and J. Grant had a common acquaintance whose inquisitive nature they shared. So they let Smith persuade them to interrupt their work on the Nile Bridge and take measurements on the pyramids for him. The Scots soon fell for the magic of the Great Pyramids. W. Dixon was particularly interested in the shafts in the King's Chamber of the Pyramid of Cheops and was surprised that there was nothing similar in the Queen's Chamber. He hired carpenter Bill Grundy to assist with work on the pyramid. Probably on August 14, 18725, W. Dixon made the discovery of his life 6. However, the north shaft was not completely carved free. Test drilling was also carried out on the east and west sides, but no cavities were found. He later described it himself, at the age of almost 80, in the article The Great Pyramid. Further exploration suggested to the editor of the Times on January 10, 1924. An excerpt from the article mentions it. By reasoning and deduction, coupled with some imagination, I suspected the existence of 2 small channels, leading from the Queen's Chamber, similar to those which existed in the King's Chamber above. We measured to the spot where they ought to be and, although there was no visible indication in the solid and most perfect condition of the wall, with hammer and chisel, we drilled a 1-inch hole, and when it was 5 inches deep chisel went through, into an open space. We then cut away the surrounding stone and revealed a small channel of about 9 inches square in section, which went in horizontally and then turned upwards at a steep angle. There was also found a similar one in the opposite wall. But where they lead to we were unable to prove, probably to some other chamber, or up to the exterior a distance of some 250 feet. The sentence from the Times article, but where they lead to we were unable to prove, suggests that an attempt was made to investigate the shafts he found. However, he does not write down which objects were used to do this or whether anything was left behind in the shaft. The discovery of new shafts in 1872 in the Pyramid of Cheops. Kings used a flat roof, like the upper chamber of the Pyramid of Cheops, which is why it is also called the King's Chamber. The openings of the shafts in the Queen's Chamber are located in the middle of the north and south walls, today at a height of 1.50 meters. If one assumes, due to the step in the corridor to the Queen's chamber, that there was originally a slab covering of around one royal chamber, 0.5236 meters, they were originally installed at the same height as that of the King's chamber, namely just under 1 meter high. In his book Our Inheritance in the Great Pyramid, Smith describes that there were fires in both shafts was done to see if the smoke went away. But even though the smoke was coming out of the south shaft, no smoke could be found on the outside of the pyramid. It is not reported that the smoke was released from the north shaft. In a detailed report, Recent Discoveries in the Great Pyramid of Egypt, Ancient Egyptian Weight, that appeared in the journal Nature in December 1872 about the discoveries in the Queen's chamber of the Cheops pyramid, but it says about the shafts. The surface of the stone in the channel on the north side appeared to be clean, as when originally cut, and the cement of the joints was perfectly white. There was a handful or two of debris of lime at the bottom of the ascending portion of the channel, which had apparently fallen during the construction, and among these debris were found the granite ball and the piece of wooden rod and fragments. There was no indication of any draft in this north channel, and indeed the untarnished state of its walls, when opened, afforded the strongest proof that it was securely closed up. Hence the certain antiquity of the granite ball and wooden rod. No trace of any outlet or opening to either channel could be discovered on the exterior of the pyramid. Experiments were made by firing a pistol in the ventilating channel of the King's chamber, at the same time holding a lighted candle at the opening of the channel in the Queen's chamber, and vice versa, with the view of ascertaining if there was any communication between them, but no such connection could be perceived. The fact that the south shaft was also blackened by smoke suggests that smoke from the inside of the Queen's chamber entered through the existing crack and blackened the shaft walls. However, this is only possible if the smoke can be extracted through the shaft. The fire test carried out by Dixon confirms this assumption. However, it is unclear where the smoke is going to ducted because no opening has been found yet. However, this was not investigated in the missions. However, it is questionable whether the blackening found can only be explained by smoke entering through a crack. It is possible that fire was often lit in the horizontal section of the shaft during the construction of the pyramid before the stone lying on top was placed. This would support the current findings. There is also a passage in the pyramid texts that would fit this. A stairway to heaven will be built for him, note, the king, so that he can ascend to heaven. He rises on the smoke of the great donation. Anas flies up as a bird, and floats down as a beetle. The